And the little subheading is to simplify them. To simplify them, which means make them as easy as possible to understand. And you know there's only certain ones that work out, the perfect square. For example, the square root of 4 is a beautiful square root because that's a 2, right? And the square root of 9 is a nice perfect square because that's a 3. Okay? Well, if you have the square root of 7, you can't really do anything about that one. Okay, there's nothing you can do, it is the square root of 7. But if you have something like the square root of 20, even though there's no perfect square answer to it, it needs to be simplified. And simplifying square roots is a pretty simple process here. If I'm asked to simplify this thing here, that's not a division sign, we're not doing any division here. This is how this works, and some of you will not do this, and you'll get a bunch of these wrong, and I may even make you do all of your assignment because you're not showing your work, but this is what you need to do. Step number 1, you need to prime factorize okay, and in big, bold, beautiful letters, make sure you write yourself this note here. You need to put down the radical signs. Radical signs need to be shown. Radical signs need to be shown. You are not at any part of your life where you should be taking any shortcuts. By that I mean this. When I prime factorize the square root of 20, the square root of 20 breaks down into the square root of 10 times the square root of 2. Radicals are just like numbers. You can break them apart by dividing or multiplying them. And this one, 2 is a prime number, so I can stop with that. The square root of 10 can be broken down into the square root of 5 times the square root of 2. Both of them are prime numbers. Okay, so my prime factorization gives me this, right? The square root of 2 times the square root of 2 times the square root of 5. Shouldn't be something tough for you because we prime factorized since you were in 5th grade. Everybody with me on that? Now, step number 2 is this, children. If you see doubles, not if you've seen double, but if you see doubles, comma, you can cross off the pair and write a normal, whatever the radicand was in there, number. But you have to kind of see for me to explain it there. I'll show you what this means here. If you have doubles of anything, I've got double square roots of 2, I cross them off, and I'm left with just one number 2. And the reason for that is this. What is the square root of 2 times the square root of 2? The square root of 4. And what is the square root of 4? Just the 2. If nothing else crosses off, then you just leave it, remultiply it. It just ends up being 2 times the square root of 5. That's what we end up with our answer. The square root of 20 simplifies down to 2 square roots of 5. 2 times the square root of 5. If they're doubles, they cross off. Boom. Now, there's a couple other examples we've got to do because there's a few more small nuances there that we'll get there. But any questions on that one so far? We're going to do a hard one here. But I don't want you, some of you, the lazy portion of you, are going to not write down the radical signs down here, and you're just going to end up with these things here, and you're going to think you can keep straight which ones have radicals, which ones don't, and it doesn't work very well that way. Take it from me, I've been around that block a lot. Square root of 216. Square root of 216. You know, if you get something, let me just say this. If you get something like the square root of 35, and you break it down and you get what? The square root of 7 times the square root of 5. Okay, no doubles, Nothing happened here. This is as simplified as it can be, because you have to get doubles in order to get them to cross off. Okay, so if you break it down and you don't get any doubles, you just go back to what you started with. Re-multiply that, that's what you started with. But let's look at 216. Square root of 216 is, let's just go square root of 2 times the square root of 108, right? You can stop with this one. Square root of 108 is the square root of 2 times the square root of 54. Let's stop at that square root of 2. Square root of 54 is the square root of 2 times the square root of 27. Square root of 27 is what? Anybody? I don't mind if you take this shortcut. You know 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. So you can just say square root of 3, square root of 3, square root of 3. All of those are prime numbers. So when I rewrite that, I end up with 3 square roots of 2 and 3 square roots of 3. To which my next step is to look for doubles. What doubles do you see? Christian, 2 square roots of 2 will cross off to give me what? 2 square roots of 2, 2 times square root of 2. Right, what is the square root of 4? 2. This ends up being just a normal 2. 2 square roots of 3 cross off to leave me 3 times 3 is 9. The square root of 9 is 3. Okay. This doesn't have a match, so I write it down. This doesn't have a match, so I write it down. And then I need to remultiply the normal numbers, get put together, and the square roots get put together. The answer to this is 6 times the square root of 6. 6 times the square root of 6. We multiply the radicals together to give you that. Now if I asked you, if I were giving you 6 times the square root of $6, you really should be able to tell me about how much money that would be. Any idea what would be your guesstimation? Well, 6 times, about what would be the square root of 6? The square root of 6 has to fall between what 2 numbers? Either 2 and 3. So 6 times the square root of 6 would be 6 times, it has to be somewhere between $12, because if it was a 2, it'd be 12, or $18, because if it was 3, it's got to be between $2 and $3. They each get multiplied by the 6. You would get between $12 and $18 for that. Should always kind of have an idea what that is. How about this one? The square root of 210. Breaks down to what? Gary, give me the first one. What would you pick? Break 2 square root of 210 down. Square root of 10 times square root of 21 is 5. Those can be broken down both into what? What square root of 10 is? Gary? 2 and 5. And the square root of 21, Kels? 7. Writing all those down, I have the square root of 2 times the square root of 3 times the square root of 5 times the square root of 7. The doubles are, Evan? If you get no doubles, nothing crosses off, you're back to where you started. This cannot be simplified any more than that because you can't put any doubles there. Jacob?
So if we come like that, we just, what do we do? Just write
Just write 210. That's it. That's it simplified. You won't know until you do this, though.
Yeah.
So once you do it, how about this? Let me give you one to try. Try the square root of 1,000. Square root of 1,000. What doest thou thinkst that the square root of 1,000 is? The square root of 1,000. root of 1,000. And the answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind, Kelvin.
10 times the square root of 2.
Yeah, you should have got this when you prime factorized. 2 square roots of 2 give you a normal 2. 2 square roots of 5 give you a normal 5. And these two don't have matches, so they are going to get remultiplied. And you end up with 10 times the square root of 10. Now, for those of you who are slightly mathematically inclined, okay, I'll give you just a small little, if your grade in math was an A, probably last quarter, you can think about it like this. If you don't get this, please don't listen. If you struggle with math, maybe don't even listen to this here. But this really, for some of you, could be a mental sort of problem, because if you think about this, if when you break this down, you think of the perfect squares. For example, 1,000 is the square root of 10 times the square root of 100. And the square root of 100 is a perfect square. You would just say, oh, the square root of 100 is 10. And there is your answer. If you could see it like that. Or if you had the square root of 162, and you broke that down into the square root of 2 times the square root of 81, square root of 81 is a perfect square. You don't really have to break it down because you're just going to put it back into that again. This is 9, and your answer is 9 times the square root of 2. Now for many of you, that doesn't make any sense. You will do it this way. But a few of you, if that's something that made sense to you, feel free. But don't take shortcuts unless you're absolutely positively sure. You still need to write the square root signs down on all of that. So don't cut